Here's some advice. Stay alive, says Hamish, and then bursts out laughing. I exchange a look with Peter before I remember I'm having nothing more to do with him. I'm surprised to see the hardness in his eyes. He generally seems so mild. That's very funny, says Peter. Suddenly he lashes out the glass in Hamish's hand. It shatters on the floor, sending the blood-red liquid running toward the back of the chain. Only not to us. Hamish considers this a moment, then punches Peter in the jaw, knocking him from his chair. When he turns back to reach for the spirits, I drive my knife into the table between his hand and the bottle, barely missing his fingers. I brace myself to deflect his hit, but it doesn't come. Instead, he sits back and squints at us. Well, what's this? Says Hamish. Did I actually get a pair of fighters this year? Peter rises from the floor and scoops a handful of ice from under the fruit tureen. He starts to raise it to the red mark on his jaw. No, says Hamish, stopping him. Let the bruise show. The audience will think you've mixed it up with another tribute before you've even made it to the arena. That's against the rules, says Peter. Only if they catch you. The bruise will say you fought. You weren't caught. Even better, says Hamish. He turns to me. Can you hit anything with that knife beside the table? The bow and arrow is my weapon, but I've spent a fair amount of time throwing knives as well. Sometimes, if I've wounded an animal with an arrow, it's better to get a knife into it too, before I approach it. I realize that if I want Hamish's attention, this is my moment to make an impression. I yank the knife out of the table, get a grip on the blade, and then throw it into the wall across the room. It was actually just hoping to get a good solid stick, but it lodges in the seam between two panels, making me look a lot better than I am. Stand over here, both of you, says Hamish, nodding to the middle of the room. We obey, and he circles us, prodding us like animals at times, checking our muscles, examining our faces. Well, you're not entirely hopeless. Same fit, and once the stylists get hold of you, you'll be attractive enough. Peter and I don't question this. The Hunger Games aren't a beauty contest, but the best-looking tributes always seem to pull more sponsors. All right, I'll make a deal with you. You don't interfere with my drinking, and I'll stay sober enough to help you, says Hamish. But you have to do exactly what I say. It's not much of a deal, but still a giant step forward from the 10 minutes ago, when we had no guide at all. Fine, says Peter. So help us, I say. When we get to the arena, what's the best strategy at a cornucopia for someone? One thing at a time. In a few minutes, we'll be pulling into the station. You'll be put in the hand of your stylist. You're not going to like what they do to you, but no matter what it is, don't resist, says Hamish. But, I began. No, but, don't resist, says Hamish. He takes a bottle of spirits from the table and leaves the car. As the door swings shut behind him, the car goes dark. There are still a few lights inside, but outside it's as if night has fallen again. I realize we must be in the tunnel that runs up through the mountains into the capital. The mountains form a natural barrier between the capital and the eastern district. It is almost impossible to enter from the east except through the tunnels. This geographical advantage was a major factor in the district losing their war and led to my being a tribute today. Since the rebels had to scale the mountains, they were easy targets for the capital's air forces. Peter Mullark and I stand in silence as the train speeds along. The tunnel goes on, and I think of the tons of rocks separating me from the sky, and my chest tightens. I hate being encased in stone this way. It reminds me of the mines and my father, trapped, unable to reach sunlight, buried forever in the darkness. The train finally begins to slow, and suddenly bright light floods the compartment. We can't help it. Both Peter and I run to the window to see what we've only seen on television. The capital, the ruling city of Panem, cameras haven't lied about its grandeur. If anything, they have not quite captured the magnificence of the glistening building in a rainbow of hills that tower into the air. The shining cars that roll down a white paved street, the oddly dressed people with bizarre hair and painted faces who have never missed a meal. All the colors seem artificial, the pinks too deep, the greens too bright, the yellow painful to the eyes. Like the flat round discs of hard candy we can never afford to buy at the tiny sweet shop in District 12. The people begin to point at us eagerly as they recognize the tribute train rolling into the city. I step away from the window, sickened by their excitement, knowing they can't wait to watch us die. But Peter holds his ground, actually waving and smiling at the gawking crowd. He only stops when the train pulls into the station, blocking us from their view. He sees me staring at him and shrugs. "Who knows?" he says. "One of them may be rich." I have misjudged him. I think of his actions since the raving began. The friendly squeeze of my hand, his father showing up with a cookie and promising to feed Prim. Did Peter pulling up to that? His tears at the station, volunteering to watch Hamish but then challenging him this morning when apparently the night sky approach had failed. And now the waving at the window, already trying to win the crowd. All of the pieces are still fitting together, but I sense he has a plan forming. He hasn't accepted his death. He's already fighting hard to stay alive, which also means that kind Peter Malark, the boy who gave me the bread, is fighting hard to kill me.